Tonight, we journey deep beneath the northern Misty Mountains, where light dares not dwell. In the crumbling bones of an ancient dwarven kingdom, a new evil stirs. The goblins are restless. Their tunnels run deeper. And something old has awakened. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in and exhale all the weight of the waking world. This is the story of the Goblin King of the Hollow Deep. There is a place in the northern Misty Mountains where no wind howls and no snow falls. A place beneath the stone, forgotten even by the dwarves who carved it. It is called the Hollow Deep, not by map makers, but by goblins whose tongues twitch with dread when they speak its name. This story begins in shadow, not the soft velvet kind that drapes over forests at dusk, but the hungry kind, the sort that lingers in cracks of stone and breathes behind you when you think you're alone. Skirn was the smallest of his brood, born sickly and wide-eyed in the refuse pits of Dunbad Merg. His skin was the wrong color, too pale, and he had a strange, quiet way about him. He didn't squeal or spit like the others. He listened, and that made him dangerous or useless, depending on who you asked. The other goblins mocked him, calling him Maggot Eye. They threw bones at him during feeding frenzies. They smeared slime on his sleeping ledge. Skirn never fought back, not because he was weak, but because he was waiting, listening. There were voices in the deep, not goblin voices, deeper ones, older than iron and fire. Sometimes when the chieftains were snarling at each other in the war rooms, Skirn would sneak down the winding back tunnels, past the fungal groves and the dead miners' shafts. There, beneath the roots of the mountain, he heard whispers in the stone. It was one such whisper that led him to the cracked stair. It was hidden behind a collapsed tunnel near the ash sluice. Most goblins avoided that place. The rocks were sharp, the air was dry, and nothing ever grew there, not even blood moss. But Skirn felt something, calling, a rhythm in the bones of the stone, pulsing like a heartbeat. He pulled away rubble for hours with clawed hands, fingers bleeding black. At last, a stairway revealed itself, jagged and ancient, hewn from some darker kind of rock. The steps weren't made for goblin feet. They were tall, uneven, and curved slightly, like they had once spiraled deeper. The air was cold, not mountain cold, but the kind of chill that comes from something buried long ago. Skirn crouched at the edge of the stairs and sniffed. Dust. Iron. Something like burnt oil and old bone. He should have turned back. Goblins fear sealed places. Doors are not for them. They do not build, only infest. But something inside Skirn was changing. A hunger, not for meat or bone, but for knowing, for power. He touched The first step. It trembled beneath his palm. Then he heard the voice again, not from behind him, from below. A voice like cracking stone and the whisper of dying fire. "Come, Skirn." He jerked his hand back, breath rattling. No one had ever said his name before, not like that. He stood there for a long time, staring down into the dark, the silence around him thick as mud. Then he turned and ran back through the tunnels, up past the pit caves and slag halls, until he reached his ledge above the chasm. That night he could not sleep. He dreamt of a crown made of hollow bones and a throne with no king. When Skirn awoke, he was different. The others noticed. He didn't flinch when they hissed at him. He didn't dodge the rock hurled at his head. He caught it and smiled. There was something behind his eyes now, a flicker, like coal heat waiting to rise. That day, he slipped back to the cracked stair. He carried no torch. Goblins didn't use them. Instead, he scraped one of the glowing cave beetles from the fungal farms and tied it to his wrist with old sinew. It blinked with dim, bluish light as he descended. The steps creaked beneath him. The air grew colder. Time slowed. The deeper he went, the more the walls changed. No longer jagged rock, but smooth panels, engraved with dwarvish runes long worn by time. They pulsed faintly, as though still warm with forgotten purpose. Then he reached it. A door. Black stone, sealed tight. Its face carved with 3 twisting symbols he did not know, but his blood did. It pounded in his ears as he stepped closer. The beetle light flickered, the voice returned. "You are the first to come in 7 ages." Skirn swallowed. He pressed his palm to the door. It was warm. "Do you seek the hollow crown?" He did not know what that was, but he nodded. Then bleed. A line split down the center of the door, like a mouth yawning open. A thin spike protruded from within. A key or a test. Without hesitation, Skirn pricked his palm and let his black goblin blood fall into the seam. The door did not open. It inhaled, and the world shifted. Above, in the crumbling war chambers of Dunbad Merg, the chieftains howled and argued over a stolen dwarf pickaxe. None noticed the faint tremor that passed beneath the stone. None heard the faint rumble, like an exhalation from the mountains, deepest lungs. But in the hollow deep, a king had taken his first step. The vault of runes. The door did not swing, nor groan, nor crack like the rotted gates of goblin keeps. It melted. The black stone dissolved like ice in smoke, leaving behind nothing but an opening so dark it swallowed the glow of Skirn's beetle light. A pressure escaped, like a deep breath released after an age of silence. Skirn stepped forward, not out of courage, but compulsion. The darkness accepted him like an old friend. Inside, the air was dry, warm, and still. No fungus grew here. No dripping echoed. No bones littered the floor. This was not a place for goblins. Not anymore. The walls were smooth and polished obsidian. Etched into them were thousands of glowing runes, dwarvish but more ancient than anything Skirn had ever seen. Some were cracked and dim, others pulsed softly, like breathing embers. The corridor sloped downward. His breath came shallow. The deeper he moved, the heavier the air became. Not thick like cave dampness, but charged like the static that dances before lightning. He passed stone sculptures of strange dwarves, taller, broader, with jagged crowns and long, cruel beards. Their eyes were hollow sockets, but somehow Skirn felt them watching, judging or welcoming. He did not know how long he walked. There was no sense of time here. No sound but his own soft footsteps and the faint buzz of the dying beetle on his wrist. And then the corridor ended. Before him lay a vast circular chamber, so wide that even the light of the runes couldn't touch the farthest walls. The ceiling arched high above, like the inside of a mountain skull. At the center stood a stone pedestal, and atop it, a box, or rather, a vault, carved from deep red stone and banded in rusted black metal. It pulsed with a heat Skirn could feel from where he stood. 3 iron rings encircled it, each etched with runes far sharper and more violent than those on the walls. But what caught Skirn's eye was the crown. It lay atop the vault like a sleeping spider. Twisted metal, broken bone, and shards of obsidian wound together into a jagged circlet. It looked ancient, cursed, wrong. Yet Skirn's breath caught in his throat. It was the crown from his dream. "Take it," whispered the voice. Skirn hesitated. "You are its heir. Its hunger knows you." The runes around the chamber flared suddenly, casting the room in flickering red light. Shadows danced across the floor like crawling insects. Skirn stepped forward. The pedestal was taller than him. He climbed its base like a child reaching toward a forbidden fire. The crown felt alive. Even before his fingers touched it, it radiated heat. No, not heat. Will. He reached out, but the moment his claws brushed the metal, his mind split. A scream echoed inside his skull, not from pain, but from memory, from knowledge he had never lived. He saw a sea of goblins kneeling in ash. He saw a king of shadows devouring stars. He saw dwarves, dozens chained to wheels of fire, forging crowns of iron teeth. He saw himself, seated on a throne carved from a screaming mountain. And beneath it all, he felt the heartbeat. Not his, not the crown's, the mountain's. It was awake. Skirn fell back, gasping. His claws trembled. Blood dripped from his nose. The beetle on his wrist had gone dark, but but the chamber remained lit with pulsing red light, like a forge stoked from the breath of some ancient god. And yet he smiled. He understood now. The crown was not just a symbol, it was a key, and the vault beneath it held the rest of the truth. He placed both hands on the lid, blood to wake it, bone to feed it, will to bind it. The voice was no longer distant. It came from the walls, the floor, his own mouth. Skirn screamed as the vault opened, not from pain, from joy. What lay inside was not gold, not jewels, not weapons. It was a mask, half bone, half iron, fused together in the shape of a snarling goblin face. Its eye sockets burned with tiny red coals, and its teeth were too long, too sharp. Skirn reached inside. As his claws wrapped around the mask, the runes of the chamber flared blindingly bright, and then went dark. Silence fell, total and perfect, and in that silence, something moved beneath the floor. When Skirn climbed the stairs again, he no longer felt small. The mask was strapped to his back. The crown rested in a sack of spider hide, but he needed neither to feel its presence. It whispered in his thoughts, teaching him, strengthening him. The others would see him now, and they would kneel. Above, in the tunnels of Dunbad-Murg, a minor tremor knocked loose a statue of a goblin warlord. The chieftains bickered louder than usual. A tunnel collapsed. 3 slaves died, but far below, in the hollow deep, a king was returning, not to rule, but to wake. The whisperer in the stone. Skirn had always known the mountain whispered, in the quiet tunnels where the moss didn't grow, in the breathless caverns where even goblins refused to scream. There, the stone pulsed with language, silent, ancient, and wrong. But now, the whisper spoke his name. He heard it in the scrape of his claws against the stone as he climbed. He heard it in the echo of his own breath. He heard it when his eyes closed. Skirn. Skirn, hollow-born, blood-bound, king beneath kings. He was halfway to the service halls when the voice began to change. It no longer came in pieces, drifting like smoke. It spoke in full thought, complete intent. It knew him, knew what he had touched, knew what he was becoming. Your blood is old, tainted with fear, but marked by shadow. Skirn staggered against the tunnel wall. His head ached. The mask on his back pulsed with warmth. His sack clinked faintly, the crown shifting as though it too breathed. He looked down at his claws. They were longer, sharper, blacker than before. He had not noticed when they changed. When he reached Dunbad-Murg, the sentries didn't see him coming. They were chewing bone meat and cackling about a fight in the pits when Skirn emerged from the shadow. Behind them, one turned, snarled. "Where you sneak?" His voice died when he saw Skirn's eyes. They were no longer dull yellow. They glowed, like ember coals. A flickering hatred lived behind them, but also understanding. The second goblin stepped back. "You smell wrong." Skirn said nothing, only stared. Then in one smooth motion he pulled the mask from his back and held it up between them. The runes along its bone frame pulsed once. Like the beat of a dark heart, the sentries collapsed to their knees. Not in reverence, in terror. Word spread fast in Dunbad Murg, not through speaking, but silence, the kind of silence that grips a den when something bigger has entered, something with longer teeth, something with purpose. Skirn didn't need to announce his return. The whispers did it for him. Through walls, through rock, through blood, he found the hollow deep. He walks with the voice. He wears the crown in his dreams. Some fled, some followed. The first to speak against him was an old chieftain with a rusted shoulder blade axe and 100 kills to his name. His voice rasped across the chasm chamber as he spat at Skirn's feet. You're a runt, worm-fed, weak of bile and mind." Skirn stepped forward. He said nothing. He lowered the mask onto his face. The runes ignited, the crown pulsed from the sack, and the voice spoke, not through Skirn's mouth, but from every wall of the chamber. "Kneel." Every goblin within hearing range collapsed to the stone, screeching in fear. The chieftain tried to stand. His legs shook. His eyes bled black tears. He screamed once and then exploded in a shower of bone and steam. Silence followed. Skirn removed the mask. The others dared not look up. The crown remained in its sack, but they felt it now, like a fire in their skulls, like hunger without a mouth. Skirn didn't have to command them. The mountain had done it for him. That night, Dunbad Murg changed. The pit fires burned green. The stone walls shifted, new cracks, forming symbols no goblin remembered carving. The slaves were silent. The chieftains no longer fought. They gathered instead in a circle around Skirn's sleeping ledge, heads bowed, mumbling old war chants they did not know they remembered. And in the deepest chamber, beneath all others, the whisperer stirred. Skirn dreamt not of battle nor glory. He dreamt of stone folding open like petals. He dreamt of cities beneath mountains. He dreamt of a throne carved from the bones of dwarves, with a voice curled around it like a snake. In the dream, the mask spoke to him. There were others before. You. All fell. All failed. Skirn reached for the throne. You must not just rule. You must awaken the hollow. It sleeps still, but not for long. He woke covered in ash. The other goblins had surrounded him in the night and carved a ring of broken teeth into the stone around him, a crude whisperer stirred again, and this time something answered. A groan, faint, like a tomb breathing for the first time in an age. Far, far below the hollow deep, a thing bound in runes turned in its sleep and smiled. Ash and iron. The days in Dunbadmerg no longer passed in the usual way. Time warped beneath the hollow crown's weight. Shadows stretched longer. Tunnels curved into themselves. Even the smell of the place changed, from rot and wet stone to something older, hot ash and burning iron. Skirn had not slept since the crowning. He did not need to. When he walked, the stone hummed beneath his feet. When he stood still, the tunnels twisted around him ever so slightly, as if the mountain itself wanted to bend in his favor. No goblin dared speak his name now. They called him the Iron Voice, the Hollow Crown, Ash Eater, Mountain Sun, all names he accepted in silence. His eyes never stopped glowing. On the 6th night after the cracked stair opened, the first forging began, not with hammers, with hands. Goblins by the dozen flooded the forge caverns, dragging iron and bone from collapsed mines and old dwarven stockpiles. They did not speak. They did not fight. They worked, driven by a hunger they did not understand. The war drums were silent, only the roar of flame. The masks were the first to be made, not helmets, masks, bone-lined, metal-rimmed, carved with screaming faces and marked with black fire. One for each of Skirn's chosen. They placed them on willingly, and when they did, their minds changed. They forgot their old names, their clans, their wounds. They became part of the hollow. Skirn sat at the center of it all, not on a throne yet, but upon a slab of fused obsidian shaped like a severed tongue. The Whisperer had called it the seat of listening. Each night he sat there, unmoving, and the mountain told him things, of dwarf things buried too deep, of roots that were not roots, of a language spoken only once, then sealed in fire. The Whisperer lived in the stone now. Its voice grew clearer, closer. You have tasted the mountain's memory, it rasped. But the hollow is not yet awake. It stirs. It hungers. Skirn asked what it needed. Blood. Belief. A signal. The next night, he gave it all three. They called it the Feast of Ash. In the deepest chasm of Dunbadmerg, where a broken dwarven statue once stood, Skirn gathered the tribes. No torches, no shouting, just a silent, crawling crowd of masked goblins, their eyes flickering red like dying coals. In the center stood a single dwarf prisoner, caught weeks ago in a failed scouting run from the Iron Hills. His beard had been hacked short, his armor stripped, his eyes wide with confusion. Skirn stepped before him. The goblin hands parted like ripples in ash. He placed the hollow crown upon his head for the first time. The runes ignited, white hot. The goblins fell to their knees. The Whisperer screamed with joy inside his skull, and Skirn raised a hand. The dwarf collapsed, not dead, but empty, as if the mountain itself had sucked his soul out through the stone. His body was cold before it hit the floor. The runes beneath the chasm flared. A new tunnel cracked open in the earth, slick, black, and breathing. The hollow was opening. From that day, Skirn ruled not as a chieftain, but as a mouthpiece. He did not speak commands. He thought them, and the goblins obeyed. The old leaders were devoured or transformed. The walls of Dunpadmerg pulsed with red veins of rune fire. No longer just stone, it became living memory, reshaped by Skirn's will. The Whisperer showed him visions of goblins marching through old dwarven tunnels toward Erebor, of the mountains splitting open to birth a new age, of dragons sleeping beneath rivers of oil, of something buried beneath the hollow deep, deeper even than fire. Soon, said the Whisperer, you must descend again. The hollow calls first. Its king. Skirn looked down at his hands. They were no longer just goblin flesh. Veins of black iron traced up his arms. His claws gleamed like obsidian. His skin shimmered faintly with ancient runes only visible in the dark. He no longer slept. He no longer blinked. He no longer feared. Above, in the high mountains, birds stopped flying. The wolves howled without cause. Dwarves in distant watchposts woke from shared nightmares. Something was changing. Something old had stretched and cracked. The hollow deep was no longer sealed, and the mountain would never be quiet again. The hollow crown. The day of the coronation came without sun, moon, or fire. Only the mountain knew, and the mountain was ready. Dunpadmerg's great chasm had changed. No longer a place of pit fights and execution chants. It had become a shrine. Massive slabs of bone lined the walls. Runes glowed like wounds in the stone. The very air burned to breathe, but no goblin dared speak of it. Skirn had not moved from his seat of listening in 6 days. His eyes no longer flickered. They burned, permanently open, permanently aware. The hollow crown waited beside him on a black iron spike, humming faintly with some inner rhythm. The masks of the chosen glowed. Their wearers no longer spoke at all. They merely stood in a circle around Skirn, staring with empty eyes, waiting for his breath. Then, in the deep, hollow silence, Skirn stood, not as a goblin, not even as a king, but as something claimed, and the Whisperer whispered one final time, "Now, let them see you." The coronation was not a ceremony. It was a surrender. No drums beat, No torches flared, no songs were sung. The goblins gathered, hundreds upon hundreds, along the terraces of the chasm, masks in hand, knuckles white, breaths held. Skirn descended the obsidian steps carved into the cliff face. Behind him, the chosen followed in silent procession. He reached the bottom. He turned to face them all. Then he placed the crown upon his head. The world changed. A ripple of lightless flame burst outward from the crown. No heat, no sound, only pressure. It passed through every goblin like a tide of old memory. They fell to the floor as one, not in reverence, in submission. Their mouths opened and they sang, not with voice, but with bone. Each spine arched, each ribcage thrummed. The entire mountain sang in a language no tongue had spoken since the first darkness. Skirn did not command it. The crown did. Within him, the whisperer laughed. The hollow hears its king, but it is not full. Not yet. It needs more. Skirn tried to speak, but his mouth would not move. He tried to blink, but his eyes would not close. His body was not his. The crown was feeding. Above the chasm, on the 6th tier of the terraces, one goblin panicked. A runt, young, still free of scars. He turned to flee, his body ignited. No fire, just absence. He vanished in an instant, and in his place, a mask fell, freshly forged, still hissing. The crown pulsed again. Disobedience feeds me. Fear tempers me. Surrender sustains me. Skirn's arms rose without command. The mountain groaned in response. More goblins screamed, some in terror, some in ecstasy. The whisperer spoke through his bones now, through the chasm walls, through the molten stone, in the deepest roots of the mountain. You are not the first, Skirn, but you may be the last. The hollow crown does not choose kings. It makes them. The feast began at dusk, though no sky could be seen, not of meat, not of drink, but of silence. No sound was made, only the crackle of bones as new tunnels carved themselves through the depths. Only the hiss of molten rock as runes scorched into the walls, writing Skirn's name in languages that had not been uttered since the forging of Angband. The chosen stood behind him, motionless. The whisperer stirred again. There is one chamber left, one room even I cannot see. Go there, and the hollow shall be whole. Skirn, crown fixed to his skull now, roots growing inward, descended from the chasm, not alone. The mountain opened. He passed the old dwarf halls, now cracked with goblin carvings. He passed the tunnels of the deep fangs, long abandoned, now writhing with rune light. He passed the cracked stair, and then he found a wall he had never seen. It pulsed. It breathed. The whisperer fell silent. Skirn placed one hand upon the stone. It was warm, too warm. From the other side came a voice, not the whisperer, something older, something angry, and it knew his name. The Feast of Teeth. The night of the feast began without word, signal, or horn. It began with the shaking, a low tremble that ran through the bones of Dunbad Murg. Stone cracked in silence. Muck dripped upward. Shadows began to flicker in directions they had no right to move. Skirn stood at the sealed wall, his hand still resting on its surface. The heat had grown unbearable, not fire, but pressure, like a scream pressed into stone. The whisperer had gone silent. For the first time, Skirn felt alone. Then came the drums, not played, not beaten, grown. The mountain began to hum, as if its very veins had learned rhythm. Pulses of thunder rolled through the hollow deep, and every goblin, every twisted soul in a mask, began to sway in perfect, unnatural unison. They gathered in the worm hall, a vast cathedral-sized space of dwarven make, long abandoned and shattered. Runes once meant to honor Mahal, the dwarf father, now glowed with a perverse mockery of creation. A long black table stood in the center. Atop it, nothing but teeth. Hundreds, thousands. Not goblin, not dwarf, not orc. Teeth of something else. They were polished like gems, arranged in patterns, spirals, concentric circles, jagged ridge lines like mountain chains. And all around them the goblins danced, not joyfully, hungrily. Skirn entered last. The hollow crown sat heavy upon his head now, fused to his skull. Runes had burned down his neck and across his chest, alive with heat. His eyes no longer glowed. They leaked light like slow-burning fire. The chosen circled the feast table, 12 of them, masked, breathing slow. Then one by one they opened their jaws and removed their own teeth. No sound, no blood. They laid them on the table and began to eat. What did they eat? Not food, not bone, but memory. Each tooth taken from the table gave them visions, snatches of worlds lost, empires burned, beasts forgotten beneath the world. One goblin convulsed and began to sing, in a tongue none had heard. Another wept stones. Another screamed until her throat turned to coal. None stopped. The whisperer whispered, faint now, like a candle sputtering. This is how the hollow feeds, through mouth, through memory, through the marrow of the deep. Soon you must enter the last room. Skirn stepped forward. The table parted for him. At its end lay a crown, not his, not of bone or iron, but of molten teeth, twisting and reshaping even as he stared. It pulsed like a heart. What lies beyond the wall is older than fire. You must make your army ready. Skirn reached toward the crown of teeth, and suddenly the wall split, not fully, just a crack, but from it came a sound so low, so deep, so thick with hunger, mountain stopped. The masks cracked. The whisperer hissed like a dying wind. It wakes. Then the dream began. Skirn stood in a tunnel that had no end. He was alone. No crown, no mask, just stone. Breathing. From the dark came a clicking, then a hiss, then a voice. Not words, a feeling. You are small. Skirn turned. No one there. Mountain pulsed. You are a seed. The stone cracked beneath his feet. From the split rose a face. Not dwarf, not goblin, made of eyes. Dozens, shifting, watching. You did not find me. I called you. Skirn tried to scream, but his mouth had no tongue. He fell into the face. The stone shattered. He woke beneath the wormhole, buried under ash. The goblins had not moved. The crown of teeth was gone. So was the table. So were the masks. But all around him, the walls were smiling, with teeth. Thousands of them. The hollow had feasted. The deepest room. The cracked wall no longer held. It did not fall nor break. It simply ceased to be. Stone, runes, air, all gone. In its place, a tunnel of obsidian, blacker than any night, smoother than any blade. It curved downward, impossibly slow, into a silence that pressed against Skirn's ears until his heartbeat was the only thing left. The whisperer was gone. For the first time since the cracked stare, Skirn heard nothing, not even his own thoughts. He walked. He did not know for how long. Time peeled away like bark from a rotted tree. The tunnel was infinite, and yet close. The stone walls pulsed faintly, but not with heat. With breath. He reached the threshold of a chamber so vast it could have held the roots of all mountains. There was no light, and yet he saw the deepest room. No carvings, no ruins, no thrones, just space, and something asleep at its center. It was not a creature, not in shape. It was a mass, black and gold and red, shifting and still. It did not move, yet every part of it breathed. Eyes blinked open across its folds, slow, lidless, ancient. They looked at Skirn, not with surprise, but with recognition. Then came the voice, not in his ears, not in his mind. It bloomed in the stone of his bones. You bring the crown. Skirn stepped forward. He could not speak. His mouth had long since vanished in this place, replaced by silence and breath and will. You were not meant to be the king. A long pause. The air did not move. Yet Skirn's skin began to peel, gently, as if the mountain were unwrapping a gift. But you answered, and the hollow opened. Now the deep may rise. The thing stirred. Its same mass unfolded slightly, just enough to reveal a shape beneath. A throne, or what might have once been one, carved not from stone, but from roots of shadow, wrapped around a still beating heart. Skirn took a step closer, and the crown upon his head cracked. The whisperer screamed. It returned, not as a voice, but a cry, shrieking up from the spiral behind him. No, you are not ready. Do not look upon it. It will unmake you. Skirn did not turn. He stepped into the deepest room. The mass pulsed once, and the whisperer vanished. A flicker. A snap. Gone. Only silence remained. Skirn dropped to one knee before the throne. The air here was thick, not with rot, but with memory. The kind of memory that cannot be survived. The kind that rewrites everything you've ever believed about the world. And then, for the first time, the true voice spoke. The hollow was never yours. You are not its king. You are its door. The floor split open, not downward, but outward. Skirn fell to his hands. Beneath the surface, not rock, but faces, layered upon each other, screaming, frozen in agony. Dwarves, goblins, beasts, even men. Every crown is carved from hunger, every throne from sacrifice. Skirn opened his mouth, and his voice was not his own. It was many. It was all. I awaken. The deepest room shuddered. The thing at its heart lifted, and in the space where no sound lived, something opened its eyes. Eyes older than fire, older than Sauron, older than Morgoth. Eyes that remembered the first song and the silence before it. Far above, in the halls of Dunbad-Murg, the stone screamed, the tunnels twisted, the forges exploded. The chasm cracked down its center and spilled black flame into the deep. The goblins fell to the floor, laughing, crying, begging for voices to return. The hollow had spoken. Its door had opened, and now nothing would stop what came next. The thing beneath. There is no time here. There is only breathing. The deepest room is gone, its edges dissolved into an endless dark, lit only by the pulsing of something ancient and alive. Skirn stood at the center. The hollow crown fused to his head, now cracked and flickering. His body had grown tall, thin, unnatural. Black veins traced down his spine. His hands no longer ended in claws, but in rooted fingers, twitching with the rhythm of something beneath him. The thing beneath had opened its eyes. Not eyes like yours or mine, eyes that see memory, that taste shape, that judge stone. They blinked, slowly unfolding across miles of shadowed mass. Each time they opened, the walls trembled. Each time they closed, a name was erased from the world above. Skirn could feel it. Goblins screaming in tunnels, turned inside out by visions. Dwarves in their mountain halls, waking in cold sweats, forgetting their gods. Even the birds above the peaks, falling silent in the sky. You have brought me teeth, The voice was no longer just in him. It was everywhere. You have fed me stone and fear. Now feed me choice. The throne of roots rose again. Its heart pulsed, a molten ruby of slow-moving blood. Sit, rule, or kneel. Serve. Skirn stood still. The hollow crown hissed. You are more than goblin. You are what crawled before the first age. Sit and make the world bleed upward. He could feel it, the power, endless, absolute. The world would open to him like a vein. The mountains would march, the rivers would boil, the hollow would rise. But deep inside, Skirn heard something else. Not the whisperer, not the thing. His own voice, the smallest part of him, the outcast, the runt, the one who listened, not ruled, and it whispered, "This is not power. This is hunger." Then thing beneath waited, eyes wide, breathing deep. The throne flared brighter. The walls pulsed like lungs. Choose. Skirn turned. He stepped away from the throne, and he knelt. Not in worship, in warning. I will not rule. I will not speak your name. I am not your king. The thing paused. The breathing slowed. The room went still. The eyes blinked. Once, twice. And then they closed. Above, Dunbadmerg fell silent. The tunnels stopped shaking. The masks cracked and crumbled. The hollow crown hissed once and turned to ash. The mountain exhaled and slept. When the goblins returned to the cracked stair, they found only dust. No crown, no bones, no king. Only a sealed wall, smooth and cold, whispering nothing. The hollow deep was closed. But some nights, when the fires burn low and the winds die down, they still say the name. Skirn, the iron voice, the one who listened, the door that chose not to open, and in the stone beneath all stone, the thing beneath waits, not angry, not defeated, patient, because one day another will listen, and this time the hollow may not ask. And so the hollow sleeps once more. The crown is dust, the mountain still, but deep beneath stone and silence, something listens. Thank you for walking with me into the dark tonight. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. Let the echoes fade and rest